The UK has softened Russian oil sanctions as fears grow over fuel shortages and rising energy prices. The Starmer government has decided to ease part of its restrictions on Russian oil products. Britain has now allowed diesel and jet fuel made from Russian crude oil to enter the UK, but it comes with a caveat. The oil is first refined in another country before being imported into Britain. Now remember, this move comes at a time when global energy markets are under intense pressure. The ongoing conflict in West Asia, especially with the disrupted Hormuz, has created fears of tighter oil supplies, higher energy prices, and possible shortages of critical fuels such as diesel and aviation fuel particularly. British authorities are now especially worried about the possibility of jet fuel shortages during the busy summer travel season when air traffic demand typically surges across Europe. Officials have issued a special license that will allow these imports to continue indefinitely. Although the government says that the policy will be reviewed periodically by the business secretary and could be modified or even withdrawn in the future if necessary, UK's decision, remember, marks a sharp contrast to its earlier position. In October last year, Britain had introduced a strict ban on the import of oil products made from Russian crude. This ban was effective even if those products were refined in third countries. That policy was part of a broader Western effort to cut off revenue streams to the Kremlin amid Russia's war with Ukraine. The aim was essentially to ensure that Russian oil could not indirectly find its way into British markets through countries such as India or Turkey, which have now become major buyers and refiners of discounted Russian crude. The new exemption effectively opens a breach in that sanctions wall. Because under these new rules, diesel and jet fuel derived from Russian crude can now legally enter Britain if the refining process takes place outside of Russia. This is important because, remember, Russia continues to export large volumes of crude oil to countries including India, Turkey, and other major refining hubs. Those countries then process the crude into finished products such as diesel, petrol, and aviation fuel, which are subsequently re-exported to international markets under the label of the refining country rather than Russia. But despite the relaxation of rules for diesel and jet fuel, other products made from Russian crude remain banned in the UK. Petrochemicals, heating oil, and certain other refined products are still covered by sanctions restrictions. The government appears to have made a deliberate decision to focus the exemption on fuels considered most critical to the economy and transport infrastructure. Now, ironically, the global energy turmoil has benefited Russia in certain ways, although Moscow has been forced to sell much of its crude at discounted rates. Higher global oil prices mean that Russian exports still generate massive revenues. Now, as long as countries continue buying Russian crude and refining it elsewhere, Kremlin maintains access to a critical source of income that can support government spending as well as military operations. But London is not alone in reassessing its sanctions policy. Washington, interestingly, has been moving toward a more flexible approach as well in response to the rising energy concerns. On Monday this week, the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced yet another extension of a sanctions waiver that allows the purchase of Russian oil transported by sea. Earlier this year, the Trump administration had introduced a temporary 30-day waiver for Indian refiners, allowing them to continue buying Russian crude despite the sanctions pressure. UK's decision highlights a growing dilemma for Western governments. On the one hand, they want to maintain economic pressure on Russia and continue supporting Ukraine. On the other hand, they must also ensure stable energy supplies, avoid sharp increases in fuel costs, and protect their own economies from further financial stress.